As we stated before, if you were not here, I am Ramondo. I am the instructor and co-host today for the basic gardening lesson. Just wanted to do a quick intro on myself. I am the newest member on the KGD staff and the garden development coordinator. And very excited to help you all learn how to grow. And if you already know how, hopefully I could be of some help to you and our expertise and how we learn how to grow our crops this year. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I just had a son on the 3rd of March. So this will wrap up my first full week of work with Keep Growing Detroit. I got a few days off of paternity leave that granted me after my son, so that was great. And now I was able to kind of put my foot in the grass and get moving. Did some site visits and some things like that to get going this week. But I'm very excited to wrap up this week and get started meeting you all and knowing you all. The other co-host you all may know and love is Keto. He's going to be taking questions you guys have in the chat. The chat is directed at the bottom of your screen, kind of in the middle. If you guys have questions, kind of put them in the chat, and we'll also try to save a period at the end of the class for questions. So yeah, just wanted to started with that and jump into Keep Growing Detroit. If you guys, some of you may be new and may not know what we do and what our mission is, but our goal is to cultivate the food sovereign city here in Detroit, where a lot of the produce is produced within the city limits by folks in the city. And we are doing pretty good. If you ask me, we've been progressing over the past, like 17 years now, 18 years now. And it's coming along very well. Just wanted to give you all a brief intro to our mission statement. Keep Growing Detroit believes that there should be places to grow food in every neighborhood throughout the city. Gardens and farms should be appropriately scaled so they can be integrated into fabric of the surrounding neighborhood and help maximize community and economic development opportunities that benefit residents. And so that is a long way of saying do not overexert yourself. Get some help and get some community members and some folks that are interested to come and help you so that we can keep these gardens going and sustainable as possible. Don't try to do it all on your own. You will wear yourself out, especially with a big project. Okay. Um, so some of you guys may know how we do reach most of the growers in our city is through the Garden Resource Program, in which we offer supplies and resources to growers within the city, Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park. If you have not, we will at some point, probably soon, drop the link for the Garden Resource online application for 2021. Um, as you guys who have already signed up know, there are a few different type of memberships we offer in the resource program, which are family gardens, community gardens, school gardens, and market gardens. So we do support these types of growers and we um, love our job. Um, so much that here are some stats from last year. We supported over 25,000 residents in the city in Highland Park and Hamtramck and growing over almost 2,000 gardens and farms last year. So we are doing well and looking to increase those numbers this year, even through the COVID. And feel like this is a great program to get to know growers throughout the city and get the youth and community members involved. Just wanted to touch bases on this is an old map from 2017, as you can see, um, of the garden resource members and where we are throughout the city. Just wanted to throw that in really quick so you guys can get a grasp of where we work and sometimes how dense members are within their own community right next to each other and may not even know it. Um, yeah, so like I said, the Garden Resource Program distributes seeds and plants, almost 86,000 packs of seeds and almost 293,000 transplants each season. We are donating to the city through the membership program and expecting to grow as the program grows even more. So I just wanted to touch a little bit about the Guard Resource Program. If you guys have not already submitted the online form or your applications in for the Garden Resource Program, Keto will put that link for the Garden Resource Program in the chat for you all to do at your convenience. Um, so the garden development team is me and Lindsay. You all may know her. She is the Garden Resource Program Manager and has been for a while and very good at her job. So we are not the only two folks in the garden development team, but we are the points of contact for the company. So you all will be more than likely getting in touch with us whenever you need some help with your garden development. So our emails are there for you all to copy, or I'll also throw them in the chat later on if you need. So yeah, there are other members of the garden development team, but we will be your main point of focus when you guys are searching for some development for your gardens in the city. Um, just a quick picture of, like I said, where we do our garden development support. And some glimpses of things that we may be able to help you guys with. Got some, looks like some community development over here to the left, and yeah, some tools down here. We help with all of that. We also have different classes and educational series that you all might be interested in, and Keto coincidentally runs that department. So if you guys have any specific topics that you would like to hear about this year or anything like that, drop a hint to Keto and he will let you know if we'll be offering that or not, and maybe connecting with you all. So yeah, now I just wanted to jump into why we are all here. The basic gardening class is so the first thing you want to do is get started, and we here at KGD want to help you all get started the most efficient way and the best way that we know how. Um, so it's best to know these things when you are getting started. This is just the basics. Is why do you want to start a garden? What's your motivation? What's your purpose? Maybe youth, maybe community involvement. It may be, I just want to teach people how to grow food. It may be somebody that you want to share crops with, or whatever it may be. Just we want to know that. And we want to know also who will be involved in the garden. And that kind of determines how big of a scale you all want to go in developing your garden and project plans. Because like I said earlier, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves and try to do too much just as one person. Want to get as much community involvement and engagement as we can. And then thirdly, we want to know what do you want to grow? What do you guys plan on growing? What do you guys plan on doing with the food? And yeah, just how what's the outline of the community garden, our family garden, our market garden that you all are starting, so we can get a better understanding of how we can help you develop that. So yeah, just these are some more steps in just getting in the getting started process. It's always good to know who owns the land that you are gardening on. It may be the land bank. For many of you who have backyard gardens, this may be your garden. your home garden, so you know that you own your backyard. But for the community gardens, we always uh, hope that they know at least who is the owner of the land, and we do offer some support to growers that or may try to purchase their land. So that's always good to know. The sun exposure, you always want to make sure that when you're starting a garden that you get adequate sunlight, at least 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours, 6 to 8 hours, at least six. But I would probably say 8 to 12 is like prime range of sun. Um, Make sure you have access to water. That may be water catchment system that you were trying to develop, or a spigot. Most of you all, it'll be a spigot that you hook a water hose up to and you just water your garden from there. But it's always important to have a general idea of where you're going to get water from before you start the garden. And because you don't want to put plants in there and you can't give them water. So always be aware of that. And then another thing that we always recommend our members to do is get a soil test, which is something that we do offer through the Garden Resource Program for active members. So we do recommend that you all get a soil test, even if you put raised bed gardens up in the community gardens, our family gardens. You want to get the soil tested to know what is up under your garden beds. Even if you have raised beds, like I said, you want to make sure that you know what you're dealing with up under those beds and how to go about that. Um, we, like I said, do offer a free soil test for active members. And basically, what active means for us in the COVID is you find some way to get active in your community, whether that be, like I said, engaging people to try to help with the community garden or start a community garden, or giving produce away, or teaching people how to grow or something of the sort. We just want people to be actively engaged in helping people how to grow in the city. And we do, like I said, offer one soil test for the members of the program. So yes, take advantage of that. And
Can I just add to
another,
that?
yeah, go ahead, Keto.
So in addition to that, as a note, if you have a larger area, like we're talking about one soil test should be no bigger than a 30 by 30 area. If you need to, if you need to do more than that, or you have two garden spots or three or whatever, if it's $30 for additional soil tests. And I did add the soil testing link to the chat, so you can have the guide to doing soil testing is in the chat.
Thank you, Keto. And yeah, like Keto said, that's very important as well, especially for the bigger gardens, because soil samples do vary a lot um from place to place in the garden. So yeah, after getting started and you kind of know where you're going, you kind of know what you want to do, you kind of got your vision outlined, and we do help with all of those things. The garden development team, we do help with, like, if you guys need some help with site design and you're not sure how you want to put your garden together and where you want to put what, you can go to our website and do a garden development request form, support request form, garden development support request form. And you can fill that out and kind of give us a rough idea of what you need from us, as far as whether it be site design, soil testing, or any type of basic knowledge in the garden, how to do what. Just give us a form and fill it out online. We'll make sure to get back to you on that.
I just
So
added that to the
yep,
chat.
nice. Thanks, Keto. Um, so with the garden prep, like I said, once you kind of know if you want to do an in-ground bed, or if you want to do raised bed gardens, or container gardens, or maybe even indoor gardening, you could kind of get an idea and a scale for what you can handle and what you or your community members can do And these are mostly the type of gardens that we see being developed. There are several different types of gardens and gardening techniques nowadays, but these are just the most common that we see and that we assist with as far as garden development. So yeah, just wanted to touch on these different types of gardens. All have their pros and cons, of course. We're going to touch on that in a little bit, but just wanted to give you all a visual of the options that you have as far as growing techniques. So as you can see at the top, this young man looks like he is starting an in-ground garden where it'll be just like a wood chip pathway and spaces to grow food. On the bottom right, there look like they're starting to raise bed gardens at some type of school or community gathering area. And the bottom left is what we call potted gardens. Um, this is another type of way that people can grow food. If you're like in an apartment with a balcony or something of the sort, you can take advantage of just growing out of pots. That is an option, and that is a way that some people grow food. So yeah, like I said, the pros and cons. Um, the pros and cons of raised beds. So let's go over the pros first. The pros of growing over in raised beds are that you get very good drainage. And uh, crops appreciate good drainage. They like to drink just like we do, and having a nice space to drain out the water so that they can breathe is always good for them. Crops definitely will flourish in raised garden beds. Maintenance is also another pro because as a in in-ground beds, you know have to weed out and everything like that, and having a raised bed above the soil. So and just assuming that the grass won't be as high as the beds, you won't have to do as much weeding or as much maintenance as you would if you chose to do a garden bed that was inside of the earth. Um, Also a pro of the raised beds is if you have bad topsoil or if you have high lead content in the soil, you can take advantage of the option to grow in a raised garden beds, so that you won't have to have direct contact with that lead high level soil. And also the accessibility is a pro um, in the raised bed gardens for seniors and youth who need youth who need a direct perimeter and know where to and where not to step. And, just for the older or injured gardeners who would not like to have to bend down so low to the ground to do their gardening. This may be a great option for you all to take advantage of as far as raised bed gardens. The cons to raised bed gardens are that they can get very expensive indeed. Um, the bigger you make them and the higher you make them, they will cost more. They will cost more to build. They will cost more to fill. And they will cost more just to overall maintain throughout the life of the raised bed garden. And as we know, there most of the raised bed gardens that we see, they are relatively around the size that are in this picture, 4 to 8, maybe 4 by 4. So if you want to have a nice growing space, you'll have to get multiple raised bed gardens, and that can get even more expensive because, like I said, they do cost to build and to fill with soil.
Excuse me,
Um,
Armando.
yep,
Could you give an estimate of what one raised bed, one 4 by 8 would cost?
one 4 by 8 raised bed. If you're just doing it by yourself, you're going to Home Depot. I think wood has gone up. If you all don't know, wood is going up. Lumber is going up, and I think last time I checked for a pressure treated lumber, a 2 by 10 is like almost like $28 or almost $30, let's say. So if you get you want to make a raised bed 4x8, you'll need about three of those. So what's that, like $90 in lumber? You're gonna need posts for the corners. That may be another $20. So that's 100, 110, $120 there. You're gonna need I recommend putting down some type of barrier between the raised bed garden and the soil that you're putting in, whether that can be getting cardboard from down the street at the store, or that can be going to Lowe's and spending up to like $50 on nice fabric weed block or something like that, whatever you can afford. Um, so yeah, that can be like another $50. And then the soil to fill the beds. Usually we recommend, like, if you're gonna do a 4x8, that'll probably take a half yard of soil. Yards of soil usually are like 30 to $50 depending on where you shop. So yeah, it can get up there. Raised bed garden can be anywhere between like 150 to 1 to 200 easy. Depending on the type of soil you get. There are different variations of soil you can fill your beds with. They have just 100% compost. They have a 50-50 mix of compost and topsoil. So yeah, depending on the type of bed you want and the type of soil you want to fill it in with, you can get pretty pricey building raised beds for sure. So yeah, we'll say around like 175 to 200, and that's not including like paying somebody to do the work. That's just the material costs. You know what I mean? So it can get pricey as far as the raised beds.
Okay.
Um
Can I do
yep,
it? And then there's a clarifying question.
yep.
Ingrid is asking, I'm not sure if I didn't hear you say this, but I'm assuming she was quoting you. The question is, she said, raised beds should not be placed on private residential yards. Why? I think more you were just talking about, we don't give raised beds out to private
Yeah,
folks, to
yeah,
home gardens, but we do try and help folks with community and market gardens.
yeah. So yeah, we don't so raised bed applicants qualify are by community. So which means you have to sign up as a community. It has to be some type of community space for us to qualify to give you the materials for the raised beds. And why we don't offer family gardens is because simply our resources are just very limited. If we offered everybody raised beds in their backyard, we would not have materials to really give our community uh members who are actually trying to start community gathering spaces, like we said in our mission. So we just try to stay focused on that, and keep being aware that we're here to get people learning how to grow. So yeah, another back to the cons for the beds. Just wanted to also point out another thing with the raised beds is that the soil dries out a little bit faster than it would in the in ground, and due to a mix of the drainage and due to it being a little bit higher, closer to the sun. Um, so yeah, that and also, like I touched on a little bit earlier, is the limited planting spaces. So when you get a raised bed, you can only plant, in the bed. So it limits the space that you would have if you were in ground and chose to do it that way. So like I said, every growing method has its pros and cons. Um, so just wanted to jump into the planting basics here.
Before we
Co
move on,
Yep, go ahead,
Romano,
kiddo.
I think we should clarify. Romano did talk about pressure treated. Um, when we distribute raised beds, we do not use pressure treated. It was definitely more of a concern in the past when there was arsenic in how they treated wood. Now that's changed. Um, it's uh, I, I think our general recommendation is that to not use pressure treated, but some people do use it. And I think you could line the inside with plastic as a barrier. So it's kind of a preference thing. And uh, so I think our KGD's kind of general standard is not to use pressure treated generally, but some people are using it. So it's a preference.
Yep. So yeah, the raised beds, there are many different types of lumber to build the raised beds with. Yeah, so like Keto said, it definitely comes down to preference at the end of the day. Preference and the amount of money you want to spend developing, putting the beds together. Um, but I think when I looked the last time I looked a few weeks ago, even just like a pine board, like a 2x10 pine was still like $18 or $15 or something like that. So it gets pricey. It definitely gets pricey, building the raised bed gardens. But like I said, that may be the best option for you, depending on the style and the amount of space that you have to grow. Uh, so yeah, just wanted to touch that. And also before I get into the planting basics, just wanted to throw a couple pros and cons for the in-ground gardens out there. So just the pros for the in-ground gardens um may be that you can develop as big of a space as you want, depending on how much space you have. And also that you have a uh not a limit, so to speak, on what you can plant and how far you can develop. And another pro to the in-ground gardens would probably be just the, I guess, access to the environment, I want to say, and the contact with the environment is very therapeutic. Not saying that you wouldn't get that from a raised bed because it is therapeutic as well, but you know, when you on the ground in the soil with your knees in the soil and kind of planting, it's for sure good. Um, and another a con for the in-ground gardens for sure is that the maintenance is higher than it would be on the raised bed gardens because you are at grass level and you are gonna get weeds that are gonna pop up. Um, so yeah, just keep those in mind whenever you deciding how much time you have to put into the garden and how much effort and energy you want to exert and maintaining it and keeping it up are very important when you're getting started growing. Um, so yeah, just wanted to jump into the basics on planting, hot crops versus cold crops, seeds versus transplants, and spacing and depth. Um, I know that some of you are very new to growing, and some of the terms you may not recognize or be familiar with. And hopefully, after this lesson, you all will have a better understanding of exactly what those seed packets that you'll be getting um, are meaning when they're telling you these things. Um, so here's a good picture of maintenance in the gardens. So there are a few different types of maintenance that will be required if you are looking to begin grow food. One of those you will be getting used to doing is thinning. This is a great picture of the thinning process here to the right. Usually when you thin, there are seeds either in a broadcast, which is what this is, a broadcast, or in a row. Um, and basically what thinning is taking some of the plants out of the space to make room for other plants to for the plants to grow. Otherwise they just get congested and not grow as well as they would without the space. So um to we'll probably put a video together on thinning. I'll try to make a note of that and do that on the web page if we already don't have one.
And
Um,
and then just to know, you reminded me what, because since we've already moved beyond raised beds, we are going to be doing a raised bed building
yep,
short video next
yep,
week.
yep,
So if
yep.
you're interested in learning how to put them together, also want to just highlight that there were some other recommendations for possible materials for raised beds in the chat, including cedar or plastic lumber or cinder blocks. Those are all good, viable options.
Indeed, indeed. There are many ways. Like I said, it really comes down to what's available to you and how much energy and time you want to put into the garden. Um, so yeah, like Keto touched on, and I totally forgot about that. And I will be doing the video on the raised bed builds, which is just like Keto kind of touched on our KGD standardized way of building a bed. People who do carpentry and may know how to do a raised bed, you guys obviously, can, you know, not look at the video or keep doing what you're doing. Or if you have something to learn or may learn something new, because there are many ways to do things. But yeah, there's a trillion ways to build the raised beds. But yeah, we will be making a video on our standardized practices of building. Um, so yeah, to the thinning. So thinning is important for crops like carrots, beets, and radish. Um, Most of those crops will be seeded in rows, like I said. And you guys who don't know how to thin, just take a look at the example here on the right, where those seeds were broadcasted into the square patch, and then they were thinned out to just a few seeds. Um, there will be different directions on how much to thin, depending on the crop, probably listed on the back of the seed pack. So keep that in mind when you guys are thinning, to be sure to not thin too much, but just thin enough to where the plants that are still in the ground can grow and get bigger. Um, Another tip for main or chore, like I said, for the garden is weeding. And that's just a chore for every garden. Every garden's gonna grow weeds, no matter, like you see the raised bed gardens, they still have weeds next to their beds that they have to maintain. Like I said earlier, the in-ground gardens kind of you have to maintain them a little bit more frequently due to the fact that they are connected to the soil directly, and there are, constantly thorns, thistles, and chickweeds and clovers and certain things that people may not want in their garden that are going to continue to grow, especially the grass. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Um, these are other maintenance techniques that you guys may or may not come across in your growing gardening. Trellising and staking. There are many different ways to do your trellising, and it really depends on the type of crop that you have and are trellising. Um, but most of the things that will need trellising are like cucumbers and beans and peas and things of the sort. We do have a informal sheet on trellising and staking. Keto, can you drop that one in the chat?
Yep.
Um, and that would just give you guys a basic guideline, like I said, on our standardized practices at Keep Growing Detroit on how to, trellis and your cucumbers and beans and peas and things of that sort. The same for staking. Staking
Can we pause for
usually.
1 second?
Go ahead, Keto.
Can everybody mute themselves, please? Thank you. We were just having a little bit of feedback. Can you speak again, please, Armando?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, I think we're good now. Great.
Okay, okay, sweet. So yeah, like I was saying, I don't know if everyone heard me or not, but Keto's gonna drop the informal guide on trellising and staking in the chat. And that'll just give you guys a general idea of how to um, put together the technique for your things like cucumbers and beans and peas and things of that sort. And also staking will be on that informal guide, and that'll just touch on how our standardized practices of staking things like tomatoes and peppers and bigger plants like eggplants and things like that the fruit will bear weight. um and it's just generally important to make sure that the fruits that are you're growing that will bear weight, like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers. Well, not so much peppers, but more so like cucumbers and tomatoes, that those things do have a support system so that they don't just fall on the ground, because that does happen. The weight of the fruits will just bear on the plant so much, and then they'll just fall over, and the fruit won't taste as good as it would if it was staked up. Um, and then I wanted to touch on watering. That is also a chore for every garden. And it does vary a lot depending on what stage you are in gardening. Seeds might take a little bit more water because they don't have a root system yet, and they uh can't really soak up the water that's there, so to speak. So they may have to get watered a little bit more frequently if you wanted to have a higher germination rate. Um, I've come across a few folks for sure in my journey of growing where it's they water the seed like once and then they leave it for like a week or two, and it's like, no, that's not gonna work with the seeds. They need adequate water. I would recommend like every 2 days or so, every 2 or 3 days, depending on the weather, and the temperatures, things of that sort. Like when it's hotter outside, you may have to water 2 or 3 times a day. When it's 90 degrees out and you're trying to plant seeds, you may have to water that much. So keep that in mind when you guys uh, are seeding. Generally, though, we do all the hard work for you guys at KGD. Most of you guys will be getting like developed plants that already have good root systems, but you will be getting seeds as well. So this is important to know and help you guys out for the germination rate. Keto, anything you want to add?
Yeah, can I add? So there's a clarifying question about water.
Sure.
So um, there's many ways to approach watering, and I think Ramondo's point about keeping seeds moist until they germinate is really important. Um, the general recommendation is 1 inch a week, or one thorough time once a week is another way to think about it. Um, so you don't want to let seeds, the soil dry out too much until the seeds germinate. And then after that, you don't want to keep it saturated all the time, because that's also bad. You don't want it, that's going to encourage rot, or issues with damping off, or, there needs to be air in the soil. And if there's too much water, then there's no place for the air for the roots of the plant. So it's kind of a balance, and it's definitely a learn by doing thing. Um, but just generally speaking, once those plants are established, and especially once they get to be a little bit bigger, one thorough time a week, and then, as Armando was saying, more frequently when it gets hotter out.
Yeah, I
Um,
was. Oh, go ahead,
so-
Keto.
and then if you're in containers, it might need to be more often. Like raised beds and smaller containers dry out much quicker.
Yep, I was gonna touch on that. That's why I kind of put the flooding picture in, because that will happen. Or like I've seen people just like throw the water hose in the garden and just like walk away from it. Like that won't work. You will end up with the picture on the right. If you just like throw the garden hose in the garden area and like walk away from it. So don't do that, and don't like Keto said, over watering is very possible. Um, and there are some signs to look for that you are overwatering. Generally speaking, when you water the soil, you'll notice that, it gets a little bit darker. And as the drainage process happens, it'll start to look like lighter, or like I like to call it, like ashy on the top. And that's how you know that you have the drainage process is happening. Now, like one that'll happen for a few days. And then what will happen is, over time, if you don't water, or you start to notice uh cracks in your garden, then that's an indicator that you may need to water as well. Um, but yeah, like Keto said, overwatering is very possible, especially with more established plants. So, like he kind of touched on, once your plants have a root system, a functioning root system, they'll be able to take up water as the soil drains in the draining process, which takes a few days. So you won't have to water necessarily every day if your plants are established. Like he said, one good time a week. And depending on how your soil drains, you'll look for those indicators and kind of know how many times a week you should be watering. And depending on also what kind of plants you have, some plants take up more water than others. So just, kind of keep an eye out in the garden as you are maintaining. And while we're on garden maintenance, I wanted to also touch on, like, when you're getting started, and you're new to gardening, you may not know how much time to commit to your garden maintenance. And I would at least try to, like, commit at least a few hours a week, or depending on your schedule, at least 1 hour a week, or at least 2 hours a week, just to get in the garden. And preferably, you don't want to make all that time up in one day, because as you guys are growing, you'll begin to know and learn that a week is a lot of time away from the garden. So you might be okay, good 1 week, and then next week you come back and you're starting to notice bugs, and you like, where did this come from? And I was just here last week. And if you go more frequently, you'll kind of like get indicators of things that are happening in the garden. But I do understand, like, everybody doesn't have time to do it you know, every other day or so. But at least twice a week, I would recommend you just setting aside a little bit of time to put some maintenance and love into the garden. Keto, you want to add anything to that?
I'm sorry, I was caught up in chat. What were we just talking about? I was trying to
No,
look at some questions in the chat. I'm
no,
trying to
I
do
was just
two at once.
talking about the garden maintenance time commitment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess the only thought I have related to that is um, to take the time to walk through the garden and once a week or so and just keep an eye on what's going on. Like, you learn a lot by just making observations in the garden in terms of, like, this one, this plant right next to it, this plant looks a little yellow, and this one right next to it, the same plant, looks really healthy. Why is that happening? And like, we're trying to give you a bunch of tips here in classes like this, but so much of it is just experiential, and you have to, like, start to get the terminology, which we, ideally we are giving you the information to make your own decisions and decide, like, what's going wrong, or figure out what's going wrong and how to address it, or what you did great, and why it went great. So observations, for health of the plants, water needs, pest pressures, like, we call it a farm walk or a garden walk, but, like, look at the plants in, try and give the whole garden a 1 2 3 top and bottom once a week or so, um to keep things looking healthy and to learn.
Yep. And just to add on to what Keto was saying, because we know some of you are new and you may not understand what we mean by, like, observation of the plants. But observation of the plants is, like he said, looking to see if leaves are droopy, if, like, yellowing of the leaves is happening, also any holes in the leaves, any things like that. Also check when you're growing, especially like leafy green vegetables. I know a lot of you probably growing greens and kale. Make sure you check the underside of those things when you're beginning to get some production of the vegetable, to check the underside and check for holes and check for bugs on the underside of the leaf as well as on the top. So just wanted to add that in there. When you're doing your garden walk and your crop observation, always kind of just run through those things really quick, and it'll really be beneficial as far as the maintenance and the production, in terms of like you can do an observational walk on Wednesday and notice that, oh, I have aphids and I need to get rid of them immediately, versus doing it once a week. Now you're not going to see the aphids, and they may have multiplied exponentially by that next week. So just taking that little bit of time to observe and care for the crops will pay off. The crops will thank you for it. And yeah, that's a big tip for sure. Like Keto just said, a lot of it is just learning from experience and doing doing those observations. So this slide was to kind of give a general idea of uh what is on the back of your seed packets as instructions. And well, I just wanted to touch on this because I know some of you may not know what these terms mean, um, as far as planting seeds. So the seed death is s- is illustrated on the bottom right hand corner here. So some seeds require not a lot of seed death at all. So this first line here, I would say, is for maybe like a half inch or so, and things like carrots and beets and things like that. You plant kind of in this range, radishes and turnips and things like that. You kind of plant along this first line here, and it doesn't really need that much soil depth, versus um, things like potatoes and garlic and things like that. Sometimes even peas. Some varieties of peas need a very deep planting depth, and so just keep that in mind when you guys see um, this this seed depth right here. That it could vary a lot, but that is what that means. That means how much space it is from the top of the soil, as far as seed spacing and plant spacing. You can see that illustrated up here. And please pay no mind to the metric. Please pay no mind to the metric. It will confuse you. But so just for a simplified version, let's say that these two plants are a foot apart. You know what I mean? And so that's what they mean by plant spacing, or in this term, seed spacing. So that's what they mean when they say the seed spacing should be 9 inches apart, and that means every 9 inches you should be dropping some seeds. Versus row spacing, row spacing. Row spacing is a totally different thing. Row spacing can be illustrated here by the difference in the rows. So this, for instance, this row spacing is 12 inches, 1 foot. So in between the rows of these beets should be 1 foot apart in rows, and they should be every 3 to 4 inches. You should be planting beet seeds, and that's based on this specific seed packet. Please read the seed packets. They are very, very, very important, and will contribute a lot to the germination of the seeds. Keto, you want to add anything?
As a general rule, take the size in terms of how deep you plant them. Well, a couple things. One, when we do the plant distributions, we send out a digital and we have available a paper copy of planting instructions that includes how deep to plant them, some more detail, similar to what was on the seed packets, but we try and give you that reference information, to have on hand when you're planting, um, for the depth and for the spacing between seeds and between plants. Uh, but as a general rule for all seeds is no, 2 to 3 times the width or the thickness of the seed. So it's a very tiny seed, like arugula or lettuce. They're very, they're pretty close to the surface. Um, you got to play some games with them a little bit. But yeah, you definitely, if you have an arugula seed that's an inch in the ground, it's going to have to fight its way to get, all the way to the top, because they have the energy inside of them to germinate, to push out their first two cotyledons. Um, and then they got to get some sunlight to generate some energy, throw down their roots deeper, and then send out their true leaves. So um you know there was a question about parsley in particular, and that's also one that's a can be finicky. I think I haven't looked at or tried to grow parsley in a minute, but if I remember correctly, they might take a while for them to germinate. So that might be another piece of the puzzle. Some
Yeah,
things, that's another thing to reference when you're planting seeds is days to germination. Classic example of that is carrots, where carrots can take up to 2 weeks, um, to germinate. So if you planted carrots and you're like, what the heck? I didn't, I planted them at the right depth, and what's going on here? You got to stay on top of that moisture until they germinate, and that can take up to 2 weeks
indeed.
in that
And
case.
just wanted to add on to what Keto was saying too. A lot of herb seeds are small in some cases too, like oregano is very tiny. So in instances where you have tiny seeds like that, I usually broadcast them and on the top of the soil, and then like grab either some type of soilless mix or a seeding starter mix, and like sprinkle it over the seeds like very very finely. And always be sure to um when you're watering seeds is to do not over pressure water them. And what that means is like so the way you water a seed and the way you water an established plants are two different ways to water. Um, and an advanced level, and we're not going to get too deep into this, but what we use when we're doing seeding is called a fogger, a mister. And what that does is like in some of the hose attachments that you guys may have a mist option on them. Some of them do come with that. And when you're starting to seed those really really small seeds, that is the best option to use for seeding those seeds, because if you try to water them with the shower or with the flat or spray or whatever, what you'll find is that you have pushed the seed like 4 feet away from where you originally planted. And even though it may germinate, like just for a pro tip, I would say, try to just go easy on the seeds. And also, as Keto touched on, the days to emerge factor and vary by plants for sure. Parsley, I know parsley and peppers, and it's just some seeds like eggplants. Some things take a very long time to germinate. Just that's just how it goes. That's just how it is. They just take a while. Some things just take a while to get comfortable. And what plays a role in that hugely is the temperature of the soil. So um, like you see here, in 5 to 10 days, you'll get germination of beets in warm soil. But the cooler the soil, the slower the germination. So if if especially here in Michigan. You guys know, you see it all the time. We get snow on Wednesday and we get 80 degrees on Sunday. So it's like, you just kind of got to watch it and take the good with the bad and kind of just manage the garden as you see fit. Um, and also another thing I wanted to touch on was thinning. Um, I'm not sure if thinning will be in the instructions, Keto. Will it be in the instructions with the seed packets as well?
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. So yeah, the thinning varies, like I said earlier, with the crops as well. Some things you'll have to thin a little bit more, and some things you won't. But it'll tell you when to thin. So this says thinning when 2 inches tall, and then thin to one in every 4 inches. So that'll give you a general reference of how many, uh, how much space should be in between the plants as you thin out. So just be on the lookout for that. Um, Kind of went over this already, but just to touch on it again for clarification purposes, plant spacing is the space between each plant. So in reference, we said that just imagine these plants are 1 foot apart. So these are 1 feet is plant spacing. If it tells you 12 inches, that means space your plants around about a foot apart. Row spacing is the space between the rows of plants. So just a distinct difference there. Row spacing and plant spacing is a very different thing. So, and then we touched on seed death already. Um, and like I said, some seeds like that are very, very, very small, like oregano and sometimes even parsley and thyme and things like that. Those seeds are very small. And so my recommendation is to garden, prep your beds up with whatever type of soil you're going to use, and broadcast them like near the top of the soil, and then sprinkle whatever you're using like over them. And again, try to miss them if you can, because if not, you'll find like they'll be wherever the water has taken them. So yeah, wanted to switch it over to the prep. So these are the market community members garden prep list and things that you can expect to receive this year. Usually we would have it kind of set up market style, but uh where you guys can just kind of pick what you want. But due to the COVID, we've been kind of like bundling everything together and kind of like trying to keep as socially distant as possible for the safety of everyone. um So yeah, this is just a quick guide and a reference point to what you all should expect this year from us, and when to receive these plants. I think we have a link to Keto. Can you drop that into the
Yep,
chat?
I just did for
Thank you,
both.
sir.
Yep.
Uh, um, so yeah, just wanted to put that in there for you guys so you know exactly what to expect and what to plan for, and kind of try to do a little bit of research because all these plants have very different maintenance requirements. So um, peas need a trellis, carrots. Oh, just one quick note on carrots. Carrots are very particular, very particular. So carrots, they like very well cultivated soil. So they're very particular about how they grow and what kind of soil they grow in. If your soil isn't prepped correctly, you may get like carrots that turn or like uh kind of like rotate or even ball up, I've seen, and things like that. So just kind of prep for that if you guys are planning on seeding carrots. Um this is a just a quick reference point of when to direct sow seeds, which means Direct sow means putting the seed directly into the ground. Um, so this is just a quick reference guide of things that we can grow. Like here now we're getting in April, we could kind of start putting lettuce mixes and arugula and things like that out. Carrots, like I just mentioned, cilantro, and things that'll just take a little bit of frost if it comes, because here in Michigan we are very you know, various in our temperatures. So it may come a time where, you know, you see like just the other day I seeded some carrots in my last round of peas, and the next day it was like 30 degrees outside. So just make sure you're aware of that. Keto, you want to drop something?
Yeah, yeah. Just there was just to clarify the garden guides that will you show the front of these? Yeah, this document I posted the links for these um, up above, and on the back side is what we were just looking at.
Yep.
So these reference charts are on the back side of those documents. So the links are in the chat, and just also wanted to highlight that the days to harvest and spacing is also on this document.
Indeed. And just to go over that too, since you did mention it, Keto, we kind of covered spacing already, but days to harvest is different from days to emerge. So days to emerge is plants to germination. Days to harvest is when you're actually gonna get arugula from your seed. So that's what 22 to 40 days. And like we said earlier, that may vary greatly depending on the temperature of the soil, the temperature of the environment at the time. So yeah, you guys have the link to that. So this is a great tool to use if you're beginning, because a lot of times we get I don't know when to plant this or that, and you can look at this guide. And when you look at these guides, also make sure that you take a good look at the forecasts in your local, you know, environment, and see how things are looking, so you know, um, because you know April just started, and you know we've been getting snow and things. It was just starting to get a warm up now, so just always keep that in mind when you're paying attention to these references, that you want to look at the forecast to kind of compare with them. Um, so yeah, now we're gonna get into a little bit more in depth of this chart, kinda, and you know, a little bit of tips and basic information, things that you guys may or may not know already about planting. So planting can be done, can be planted. Cold weather crops can be planted in the spring after the ground has thawed and the soil is not too wet. So that would be like now, the ground is thawed, and you know, thawed means we can work the soil. We don't have to like fight and anything like that. We could kind of, you know, go dig it up without any uh without too much resistance, and that the soil is not too wet. Um, and you know, as we warm up, you'll see puddles and things of that sort, and just kind of check out for that, and that'll be a good indication of when and when not to plant. Um, so Keto, you want to add anything to that?
Nope.
All right. Um, as early as mid-March, but likely best after the 1st of April, which we just discussed. Like I think I planted some seeds mid to late March, and then April 1st it was like 30 degrees. So like I said, whenever you look at those references, just kind of pay attention to the forecast. And some crops can tolerate, well, most of these crops can tolerate a little bit of frost, but not too much. Can tolerate mild freezing temperatures. So that's not like 15 degrees. That's like now where you make it like a bite, a few hours of 30 degree temperatures, 35-degree temperatures that are close to frost. They can still germinate in these soil temperatures, and as we recognized earlier, it'll just take a little bit longer for that process. And that's all these greens here. Spinach is another good one that I've already seeded in my garden. Spinach can take some good frost, and you can also plant spinach on the fall end of the year, and it'll be able to take a little bit of frost. But um, just a tip for if you're gonna do that, also keep in mind that the moisture content of your crop, because things like lettuce, if you try to do that with lettuce, like the lettuce would freeze because it's mostly water. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind. And yeah, but spinach and Swiss chard, they're really good to grow on either end of the spring or fall. Um, so yeah, root crops that we could plant early are carrots, beets, turnips, radish, and salad turnips. Herbs are chamomile, dill, and cilantro, and legumes are snap peas and shelling peas. And also keep in mind that all these different things do different things to the soil. All these different crops, they all affect the soil in different ways. Like legumes, they add nitrogen to your soil. So you know, if you felt like you needed to add some or just wanted to, you know, heal the soil up a little bit more, this would be a good crop to throw into your garden just to give it a little nitrogen boost. Um, Leafy greens. So we're gonna go over leafy greens can be grown for baby salad or mature. Um, Baby salad, those the salad mixes and leafy greens can take a lot of maintenance to get ideal. So be cautious of that. When you're saying that you want a baby salad green, that means that you know you're gonna want to stay uh on those crops as far as managing the weeds. You don't want grass in your baby salad mix, right? So you kind of like want to make sure that you're staying on top of that on top of those things as far as salad. But yeah, so some leafy greens can be grown to for baby salad um or mature size. So like they have different types of spinach and lettuce that you can continuously cut for the salad mixes, or you can just let it mature out and just harvest the whole type of lettuce. Um, Denser planting for baby. Like I was saying earlier, you kind of want to, if you want a baby salad mix, you want to make sure you plant enough so there's nothing else in that particular row of seeds besides the salad mix. And that will take a combination of a dense planting and also maintenance, because it will happen. Like you can fill the whole furrow up with nothing but baby green seeds, and it'll be a grass in there somewhere. So just check out for that if that's something that you really want in your garden, is that salad mix, which I know a lot of people do like to grow, are starting to grow salad mixes. And that's something that I always advise, is to make sure that the maintenance is available for the baby salad mix greens. Um, and like I said earlier, they kind of have a a quicker harvest and also a more continuous harvest, as you'll be able to continually cut them. I usually recommend no more than, I want to say, like 7 cuts of baby greens. So like if you're cutting, usually it take like a week or so, week or two, depending on the soil, um, in between cuts. So if I'm cutting my baby green salad mix for the first time, boom, that's 1 cut. And then I think like every week or 2 weeks tops, you can cut it again depending on how it's growing and how your maintenance schedule is. And but I would recommend no more than like 7 or 8 cuts, or if you know, I would just really taste it, and you know, once you like, oh, it's too bitter, then obviously you just take it out. But I recommend usually like no more than 7. Cause keto, how about you?
I just was gonna say at some point it'll be clear, like it's just kind of uh, I mean,
Exactly.
I'm
So
not that. I mean, you must be doing. I've never been able to get that many cuts, but you can get a lot of cuts.
I get a
And
lot. I get at
basically,
least 7.
right? And just one of the main points there is to there's like you got to look at the center of the plant. You don't want to cut it all the way to the ground. You want to leave a couple inches.
For the new
Uh,
leaf to grow.
right. So you're looking to harvest it when they're like 4 inches tall or so.
I do 4 to
And
6.
yeah, 4 to 6, right? And then you're gonna leave 1 to 2 because that's where the growing point is at.
Yeah.
And after you know the first harvest is going to be super clean and beautiful, and then as they come, they're going to grow back and then grow back. Um, at some point, they're just it's going to be kind of really spotty, and maybe that's the time to pull it up and plant something else.
Indeed. And you'll know, just as you continue to harvest, you'll know when to pull it up and when to just call it quits. Sometimes the roots will just start to come up, or it just won't grow as fast. You know what I mean? Or like Keto said, it'll just get really patchy, and it's just like, okay, the plants will let you know. And also another great tip from Keto is, when you are growing the mixes, don't ever cut it all the way down to the ground. Always leave a few inches for new leaf growth. And you'll see that if you get close enough to the plants, you'll see new leaves sprouting, and it'll kind of give you a general reference of where you should be cutting. So yeah, just make sure you do a good observation of that. Um, so yeah, more space for bigger plants. Obviously, if we want the mature leafy green, in the instance of kale and collards, we know that we need to give those plants a lot of space versus the things like salad mixes. Um, so yeah, the things like the mature plants like collards and kale, those are the most common leafy greens that we let grow maturely. They harvest larger and have stronger flavors because they're more mature. And um, those type of greens are leaf by leaf, which means that you just harvest the one leaf at a time. Um, and just a quick tip, when you're harvesting those leafy greens, be sure to harvest from the bottom of the plant. Don't like take the new baby leaves in the middle of the plant and leave the bigger ones. You kind of want to take the bigger leaves that are at the bottom of the plants and then let the new smaller leaves get bigger as the plant grows. Um, and there's also a whole head harvest, which would be things like broccoli or cabbage, where you would just harvest the whole head of the plant, and that'll be pretty much it. Uh, Swiss chard, spinach, and lettuce have minimal pest issues, which is relatively true. I've grown a lot of lettuce, and the worst thing that happened to it is like the rabbits may eat a little bit of it, but they don't go crazy. Swiss chard and spinach are relatively decent, like um, don't have any pest issues at all. All greens, arugula, mustard, and turnip have issues with flea beetles and aphids, and we will discuss that in a later slide. Um,
Can I jump in real quick?
yeah, go ahead, Keto.
Oh, it looks like Betty has a question. Betty, can you ask the question in the chat, or if you want to ask in person, maybe we'll have time at the end. Or your hand is up. Okay. Well,
Okay.
go ahead.
Um, so root crops, cold weather root crops. Root crops grow lower to the ground than some other crops and could be subject to shading. And that's a great point. As you plan your garden, you kind of want to be aware of where things are planted. so you don't shade out other crops. Like you don't want to put anything under a squash plant. If you ever grown a squash plant, you know it takes a lot of space, and don't plant anything really next to it because it'll probably get shaded out over time. So just to add to that, um, yeah, always be kind of like aware of what plants you want to get big. We'll want to let it get big, and what plants you'll you know, kind of have room to closer to the ground to keep them, and make sure that there's some space to in between them, so nothing gets shaded out and everything can grow properly. Um, Generally seeded densely and thinned, which is true. We kind of seen and discussed that picture. And that goes for carrots, beets, turnip, and radish, and salad turnip. Um, all those things need to get thinned as they grow bigger. And this helps get adequate spacing in a compact area. Indeed, which is true. Um, do not compete well with weeds, especially carrots. So, like I was saying earlier, carrots are very particular. They do not like weeds. They will turn. Like if a carrot grows, we know carrots grow straight down. So if a carrot grows and there's like a rock or something in the way or a weed in the way, the carrot will wrap around whatever it is and kind of grow if it can. If it can't, it'll literally just be like whatever, I'm done. You know what I mean? So um yeah, kind of make sure that when you are planting carrots that you have really worked the soil well and that you have really taking the time to make sure that the soil is soft and there's not a lot of rocks and weeds and things like that in it. Um, Carrots can take up to 2 weeks to germinate, which is indeed very true. They kind of take a while, but once they start germinating, they do very well as far as growth. Um, Tip to use a piece of wood to cover seed bed and retain moisture until germ end of germ period, because these are one-time harvest crops considered succession planting. Indeed. Also, instead of a piece of wood to cover the seed bed, you could use a lot of different things to kind of protect the seeds. And this is because, you know, we do have animals in the city that will come disturb your seeds once you plant them. So you kind of do want to protect them once they are seeded. For instance, when I planted my peas, like before I could even go get the row cover, which is what I used, they were like already like trying to get to them. So you kind of make sure that you want to have something there to protect your seedlings. Otherwise, you know, they're very susceptible to get disturbed. Um, and like the slide was just noting too, things like carrots and beets, you can only harvest them one time. So if you are looking to, there's two different ways that you can succession. Well, there's many different ways, but two different basic ways is depending on your space. So let's say you had a 10-foot bed that you wanted to dedicate to just carrots or beets. You could do a little bit at a time. So if you got a 10-foot bed, you could do like I'm gonna do 1 foot of carrots at a time or 2 feet of carrots at a time. So I know I have every 2 weeks I have a succession harvest of carrots. Um, or you can just do depending on the space, you can just do you know, if you have 5 beds, you can do one side of one bed and one side of the other bed. But the kind of focus is to make sure that you have enough successions where you can get harvest throughout the seasons. And carrots is a good crop to represent that because they can kind of be planted throughout the year, starting now and like all the way up until like July and August, and you'll be able to harvest them throughout the whole year. So just keep that in mind that you'll only be able to harvest them one time. Um, and also note how many days to harvest those particular carrots are or beets are, because that'll give you a general idea of when to plant them on the later end. Just count the days back if it's 50 or 70, something like that. Um, plant 20 seeds, 20 radishes in week 1, and again and 2 weeks later to stagger harvest. Otherwise, if you planted 40 at once, you have 40 radishes all at one time. And if you have a root cellar, that's great. But if you have just small storage space, then you want to make sure that you kind of spread that out as much as you can. Cold weather herbs, chamomile, uh, and dill grow well as loosely seeded patch. And I had a dill patch in my garden a few years ago, and ever since I've had it, I've never ran out of dill ever because like it's one of those seeds. Dill seeds are very small as well, very small, and it's just one of those things that like once it gets in the garden, kind of like it's in there kind of deal, and it'll just continually pop up throughout the growing growing experience. So that's just another thing to watch out for. Scatter seeds and cover shallowly, which is I kind of tried to explain that earlier with the same with the oregano and things like that. Just all the chamomile and dill seeds are very small in particular. So you kind of just want to make sure that you scatter them over the soil and then cover them with a little bit of soil, and then like I said, mist them because if you kind of spray them, they'll be all over the place. And chamomile you harvest by removing the flower heads and placing on a tray to dry. Um, Harvest flowers often for continuous production, and that's what a lot of crops as we'll discuss. But yeah, the more you harvest, the more plants, the more the plant can have energy to produce more. Um, and so just wanted to note that, and then the harvest dill, harvest leaves and flowers for dry or fresh use. Do not remove more than 1/3 of the plant at a time, because you can damage it if you remove too much, and affect the rate of growth for the dill. But it's dill is pretty strong. You can like I said, cut this whole branch off and it'll grow more over here or something like that. But yeah, dill is a good herb to for sure have. Cilantro, one seed every 2 inches, inch 2 inches, 2.5 inch deep, 2 inches, one seed every 2 inches, half inch deep. So these cilantro seeds are a little bit bigger. So like with chamomile and dill, you would just kind of scatter it and cover. These you need to actually plant a half inch deep, and then harvest once, leave and let the plants get 6 inches tall. Um, Plants will bolt or go to seed in hot weather. Indeed, and coriander is what the cilantro seed is called. But yes, they will bolt in high temperatures, or if the plant is stressed out, they will bolt. Harvest all of the plant or remove before the heat of summer sets in because it will not taste the same. Spring legumes, we kind of touched on. Oh, go ahead, Keto.
Just a time check. We are at just about at 2:30. So
Okay,
um, just, for your pacing, just to keep you on track.
indeed. So yeah, we're gonna touch through this spring legumes. So every 1 to 3 inches, 1 inch deep. These are kind of bigger seeds, so you kind of gotta push them down in the soil a little bit. Mines will grow about 2.5 feet and can grow with or without the support of trellis. Entire pea pod of snap peas can be eaten. Wait to pick until the pods are nicely swollen, about 3 inches. Shelling peas are harvesting for the peas, not the pods. So remember that when you are planting, and peas have minimal pest problems. Brassicas are also cold weather crop. We kind of touched on that. Broccoli, cabbage, collards, and kale. You can start it indoors. We do that for you at Keep Growing Detroit, so you guys will get all these plants already established, and you could just plant them into the garden, so they're ready to be planted after they've been hardened off, which we also do for you. Um, so brassicas. all descendants of wild collards. They are biennial, which means they go to seed in the second season if they make it through the winter. Most grow 18 to 24 inches high and occupy about 1.5 square feet of a garden. Broccoli, cabbage, kale, and bok choy can be planted again in July for fall harvest. And these crops also can tolerate some frost and freezing and become very sweet after a little bit of frost. Common pests are aphids, cabbage loopers, and flea beetles, which we're going to touch on in a few. This is kind of saying the same thing, just a repetitive. Just noting the edible parts of the broccoli, immature flower. These plants need to be spaced like 12 to 18 inches. And when you harvest, you just snap the heads off once they are fully grown. Yeah, don't wait too long with broccoli because the top of the broccoli will flower if you do. And a good way to know if your broccoli is ready or not, in my opinion, is just to watch the top of it. And once the flowers buds begin to like swell up, you need to kind of get it before the flowers go to bloom. Keto, you want to add anything to that?
Nope.
All right. Once you harvest the main head, it will send smaller side shoots out for broccoli, so make sure you don't pull up the whole plant. Brussels sprouts, they grow in the nodes. I added this right here so you guys know what nodes are. These are what nodes are. They're between the stem and the base of the leaf, and these are where your Brussels sprouts will be coming. Um, they're one-time harvest as well. Collards, they're continually harvest as we mentioned earlier. So be sure to maintenance them and harvest them thoroughly because the more you harvest, the more they will produce. Same with kale and bok choy is kind of optional. It's up to you, but most people just harvest the head. So, but experiment, do what you must. Brassica pests are aphids, which are these gray bugs here. Um, they're soft body insects, so they're very easy to kill, but they are pests. They will come. They do have a season in the year, and so how we treat them is I recommend just a strong blast of water. They're very soft tissue animals, so just a small blast of water will kill them and be done. And or you could spray with 1 teaspoon of non-detergent soap, Dawn or Dr. Bonners, and a half teaspoon of cayenne in 1 pint of water. Cabbage loopers are another brassica pest. They are just something you'll see along with your garden observation. They're found on the leaves on the underside, so make sure when you do your observation, you look on the bottom of the leaves and you'll see these. And you could just remove them by hand when you do, and you know, get rid of them and squish them. Flea beetles are another pest. They're small, and you will see this. This is a good indication that you have flea beetles. These little bite marks in your leaves. That's something to pay attention to as you're doing your garden observation. And they are very hard to treat because once they are established, you kind of really just got to let them ride out. Um, so to prevent them from establishing, a good way is to cover your crops with row cover um, or rotate crops. Now there are like sprays that you can use and that they have, but we always try to, stay as organic as possible and try to have folks do organic practices. Um, so lettuce, spacing 6 inches apart, harvest whole head or peak.
Excuse me, before you
Go
move
ahead,
on.
go ahead,
Can
kiddo.
yeah, can I add a little bit to flea beetles?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Uh, there was just some questions about pests, just to kind of, there was a lot of interest in pests, and I'm not sure if we were going to get into squirrels. Is that in the slides? Do you remember? Is that
Squirrels is not in the slots.
okay? So maybe we could just spend a minute on pests
Okay.
here, just because we're like we were talking about some of the pests,
Yep.
and also address squirrels and groundhogs.
Okay.
Um, but before I go to that, um, uh, flea beetles are hard body insects, so that makes them really difficult to address. The row cover, just to reiterate, the row cover as a preventative measure is going to be your best method. And then if you're having really terrible issues, it might qualify taking a year off of the crops that are affected by flea beetles. Um, they're just really difficult to address. Uh, they're in terms of like, and then there was some questions about can you should you kill all the pests, or are they gonna or is there a way to prevent them there? So each crop has there's a each crop has, well, of the common pests, not every crop has pest problems. So we're going through some of the common ones here, and Romano's been kind of ticking through some of the ones that we know the most: aphids and flea beetles and um,
Loopers.
cabbage loopers and things like that. Uh, there's no way to not get them to come. Like, they're gonna come. It's a fact of life, and they're part. We have, and on some level, we have to accept that they're part of the ecosystem and they serve
Indeed.
a purpose. And the only way you're gonna like absolutely not have any of them is to use harsh chemicals, and you don't want to be putting that kind of stuff on your food. So it's more of a kind of wait and see, and how do like, once you have a problem, deal with it. In some cases, you can do some prevention. Getting some of the row cover is not a bad idea. We will be having that row cover for sale in the store, right, Ramondo?
Yep.
Um, so row cover, if you're not familiar, is it looks like bed sheets kind of. It's spun-bound plastic that allows light and water to penetrate through, but it's a protective layer. So it's something where you would put it on, like you would put it like over your crops right when you plant them, and keep it on them until they get to about teenager size, to give them the an advantage over the other over the pests, and the plants that get time to get established.
Indeed.
Okay.
All right.
And then and I guess then in terms of squirrels
Yeah.
and groundhogs, squirrels are tricky. uh You know, so one, probably one of the best things to have for squirrels is to have a dog around, because the dog is really interested in the squirrel, and he's always going to pay attention to the squirrel. Squirrels are, have the ability to climb all over and climb in and all that. If you're really having bad squirrel issues, you could play around with covering the plants with row cover, or some kind of caging that covers over the top. um any kind of deterrence, like there are, like some products out there, like garden lawn sprayers that are laser, that when an animal goes in front of it, it goes off, so that can just deter the squirrels. um and then the other things, uh, some people will do catch and release with squirrels. Get one of those live traps and capture, especially if you have lots of squirrels, you can live trap them and take them to the park and release them. But it's not an easy one to address. Um, uh, I would say just try stuff. You got to try different things and switch it up. And I'm sorry, it's not easy. Um, but that, the squirrels are a finicky one. Groundhogs, and, I guess groundhogs, any kind of mammals in general, there is a product out there called Plant Skid. Uh, I'll write it here because it's a funny spelling. It's like, I think it's like made out of coyote urine, or
I was
some
gonna
kind of,
say, yeah. They
some
have
kind
like pure
of
coyote weed
predator.
too.
It's like this the scent of the predator. So you can spray that around your garden, um, for any kind of mammal. That might be a good deterrent, because if they smell any kind of predators, that may help But you gotta re-up this. You gotta, you know, spray again after rains and things of that sort.
Yep.
Sorry to hear about your corn last year, Andrea.
Oh, man, I know squirrel. I know squirrel loss personally, so I get it. I use row cover me personally. I use row cover and cinder blocks, and just kind of make it a barrier to kind of deter them to from digging and trying to get to your crops. But you know, if they're determined enough, they will chew through it and you know get to your plants. But most of the time, if they have a deterrent or any type of predator smell, like Keto said, coyote pee. You can also use like old farm clothes that have your scent on them. That'll kind of deter them for a little bit. But also, like Keto mentioned, you kind of gotta keep doing those things as the wind blows and as the rain washes scents away. You'll have to continue to be on top of those things to kind of fight them away. But yeah, I know squirrel loss very, very personally. Groundhogs I haven't had too much of an issue with just yet. Hopefully I won't. But yeah, there's no definitive way to get rid of those pests. You just kind of got to keep trying new things and see whatever works best for you. Um, but yeah, back to the lettuce. Um, Lettuce, you can harvest the whole heads or pick larger outside leaves as the plant grows. Lettuce, it is best to harvest early in the morning. If you have never heard of chlorophyll, it does not taste good. It's very bitter, so it's best to harvest any type of lettuce or any type of lettuce mixes that you want to harvest. You need to do them as early as possible, preferably before the sun like starts to hit that particular plant because then it'll start photosensing and that's when the chlorophyll like really builds up. So you want to kind of make sure that you get to them before then, and also watch out for bolting, which is when the center head begins to extend upward, and then you'll begin to see what's called the seed stalk. And that's how you also know that it's probably time for you to pull that lettuce plant out because it's not gonna taste as good as it used to. Hot weather encourages early bolting, and leaves will turn bitter. Um, so to the hot weather crops now. They can be planted after the frost day in May. So these crops cannot tolerate frost at all. Can't tolerate mild freezing temperatures like a 1 week ago. So please be sure to make sure that the frost has passed. Check your forecast to make sure that it's safe to plant these things. Most take preferred soil temp of 65 degrees or more. So be on the lookout for that. Beans, black eyed peas, okra, squashes, zucchini, cucumbers, callaloo, sunflower, zinnias, nasturtium, all those good stuff. Make sure that frost has passed, otherwise they will not do good. Beans, plant pole beans 4 to 6 inches apart in rows 18 inches apart. They are great for container gardens. Um, Bush beans are a different kind of bean. They need to be planted 3 inches apart in rows 18 inches apart, and install a trellis for pole beans at the time of planting. That's very important because pole beans will need a trellis. Black eyed peas may be harvested early 60 days as snap bean or late 90 days as dry bean. So keep that in mind whenever you're harvesting. What is your preference? Pick pole beans often for a continuous harvest. Harvest early when pods are small, and that goes for these guys as well. Cucumbers. Cucumbers will push out a lot of crops. Spacing is very important. Otherwise, you may be susceptible to what's called powdery mildew. And this is just for all the new growers who don't know. Powdery mildew is a like white powder that grows on your plants, usually during the fall season. once right before the winter is setting in. So be sure to make sure that you space your cucumber plants at least 18 inches apart. Cucumber vines will take over if not trellis, so please try to trellis them. And it's better to harvest cucumbers once they are trellised and the cucumbers will just hang for you and you'll be able to just like cut them off and enjoy. 1 inch of rain or hand watering per week. Cucumbers are very they have a lot of moisture content. So you'll notice after a rain, your cucumbers will produce a lot. So keep that in mind too, just as a quick little pro tip. Check your cucumbers after the rain because they will produce. Go ahead, Keto. I see you.
Um, so we are getting towards, we're at about 2:45, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions.
Indeed.
So first, let me say, for those in the chat, there's been some inquiry. Um, we are definitely going to be sharing the slides, and I think that a lot of the remainder of the slides are, maybe you could just kind of go over them briefly, just so
Yeah,
people can get the highlights for a
indeed.
few minutes, and then let's leave the last 10 minutes for questions.
Indeed. We don't have a lot of slides left, guys. So I'm gonna push through these real fast. Um, this is the cucumber beetle. Hopefully you guys won't have to meet him. Because he's a soft, I mean a hard body insect as well, and they're kind of tough to get rid of. Um, but a couple different ways you can fight them is again the row cover and waiting till later on in the season to plant is another way you can fight them. They'll kind of like have eaten everyone else's cucumber, so they won't be worried about yours type of deal. Um, but here's another hot weather transplant crop list. You can these are started indoors in March to get a jump on the growing season, and they are ready to be planted after the last frost date in mid-May. So these will be ready to go for you. We do all the seeding and hardening off. All the hard stuff is done, so you guys can just plant when it's time. Nightshades, for sure, one of the most popular plant families. They're very heavy feeders. These plant rows need to be very far apart, as you can see, 2 and 3 feet apart. Tomato cages, trellising, you have to trellis your tomatoes, whether they are the big beefy steak tomatoes or the small cherry salad tomatoes. You want to make sure that you have some type of trellising system set up for them to be able to handle the weight of that fruit. Berry have to plant when planted for more roots. Um, Suckering to promote better fruiting and easy management. Um, we'll probably run back into suckering. Peppers, plants 18 inches apart. Roasting and bell peppers may require staking. Both may be picked green or red, so you don't have to wait for the red peppers to turn red. They you could pick them green and they'll still ripen. Eggplants, plant those 18 to 24 inches apart in rows 3. That probably should be feet apart. Um, Tomatillo, plant 18 inches apart. Wild plants love a tomato, love a tomato carrots. Tomatillos are delicious if you've never had any. Ground cherries, plant 18 inches apart and try growing in hanging baskets for very easy harvest. Common pests are again aphids, the potato beetle, and blight. This is a quick glance of the tomato hornworm, one of the most common insects you'll see on tomato plants. And you could just pick these guys off with a stick and squish them. That's usually what I do. But this is another reason why you have to, for sure, at least check on the garden at least once a week. And just watch out for him because they are very tricky. They can get into camouflage mode and you won't see them. Aphids, same deal with them. Kind of be sure to check for them, and you could just hit those aphids with a quick blast of water, and it should get rid of them. Aphid damage. Concurbents like watermelons and cucumbers. Plant 18 inches apart in mounds. Watermelons need lots of water, just like the cucumbers. one inch of rain or hand water per week. They require lots of space. So if you're going to do watermelons in a raised bed garden, you may only want to put one or two plants, and that is it, nothing else. Use straw to hide the growing fruit from squirrels and neighbors, or you can do like some type of cage like Keto was recommending. Watch for powdery mildew and cucumber beetle harvest. The spot where the melon contacts the ground, be sure to turn your melons, or they will have that spot. They all do, but it'll be bad if you don't turn it. Um, the tendril closest to where the melon connects to the main stem should be brown and dry when you harvest. The thumb right melons as a muffled, hollow sound. You'll gently knock on them, but you can, kind of beat them a little bit, and they'll let you know if they're ready. Summer squash plant 18 to 24 inches apart in mounds, water at least once a week. Once the plant have established, you can, kind of take it easy. Harvest when squash are still small and their skin is still easily pierced with the fingernail. Remove any leaves that have powdery mildew is important because it will spread. This is a quick picture of powdery mildew, and that is it, you guys. Um, Want to open it up for questions and leave a couple minutes to hear from you all. And I hope you learned something and enjoyed the lesson. And yeah, ready for questions.
Great. Thanks, Romano. It was
Yeah,
great.
no worries. No worries.
So we either you can feel free to either unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you want to put it in the chat. I'm going to start out with the question about, are you talking from Kathy? You're asking about how do you tell a male flower? Are you talking about on melons? Is that right?
Yes, he just said you have to make sure that you only eat the male flowers, or just on that previous slide it said you can eat the see blossoms are delicious. Just make sure you're only eating the male flowers. The bottom one, the bottom.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Honestly, this one's not at the top of my head. Romano, do you remember?
I remember that the anatomy of the flowers are different. So if you look at the blooms, you can tell which ones have the anther and which ones don't. And so it'll kind of let you know, and you can you guys, I don't have the
I think
anatomy
honestly,
chart here, but you can look and tell which ones have the anther and which ones don't.
I think you can honestly eat both of them.
Yeah, it won't hurt.
Yeah.
It won't hurt. I'm not sure why it says that.
Yeah.
I've never experienced where you couldn't eat either one of the flowers. They're all edible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question about where can you get row cover? We will be selling it in our online store, which I put in the chat up above. Let's see if I can. Here it is. I'm not sure if it's live on the store yet, but it should be live very soon. That's probably the easiest way to get it. If you want more volume, I think we're doing, they're 10-foot wide pieces, and I think they're like 15 feet long. If you need longer lengths, you can get that. You can get rolls from either Johnny Seeds or places like Farm Tech, which I'm putting in the chat, or well, that's a good start.
Yeah, I would go with Johnny's.
Yeah. So let's see. Yes, you can drop soil tests off at the office on Monday. I'll be around. Should we uproot all plants from last year's? Yes. If you have stuff still growing from last year, unless you can harvest it, I would harvest it one last time. It really depends on if you need that space to grow your next round. But for the most part, at some point soon, that stuff's going to be it's going to start to bolt or whatever, and you got to make room, based on what room you got to work with.
And also, as you're harvesting anything from last year, make sure you taste it, and make sure it's to your liking. Yeah, but I would recommend also harvesting anything from last year and then just ripping it out.
Okay. Ladon is asking, so Ladon, we do not sell plants individually. We are, we encourage folks to join the Garden Resource Program, which is on our website, DetroitAgriculture.net or keepgrowingdetroit.org. And it's for residents of Detroit, Highland Park, or Hamtramck, but we don't, basically you join, you pay a yearly fee, you get access to plants. Yes, Kathy, we will have sunflower seeds. Anybody else want to speak up and unmute yourself, add some questions?
I have one more question. This is Kathy. Will
Sure,
you
Kathy.
start the sunflower plants, or you're just gonna have the seeds for us to do ourselves?
Seeds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Anybody unsure of anything before they get started this year, or want to know anything we can help or maybe offer resources with?
I
I
want
have
to
a
say
question.
thank you so much for this presentation. This is going to be a great help. Both of you did a very great job. Thank you so much.
I got a
You're welcome.
question.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Sharon. Thank you, Kathy. Go ahead, Sharon. You're on mute. You're on mute, Sharon.
Okay. Okay,
Yep.
you hear me now?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay. I'm about to try to get those raised beds,
Okay.
and I'm concerned about the barriers. What should I use? I know you said we could use like the debris that we clean up the garden, the
Yep.
yard around there, but what else? I want to make sure that grass doesn't come back up.
You can use cardboard first.
Okay.
If you don't have any money to spend on like weed block or anything like that, I use cardboard first, and then I put down whatever grass clippings, or if you've cut your grass already, and make sure if you're putting grass clippings in there that they are not sprayed or not infected with
Okay.
anything. Um, so I kind of hear echo. Can you guys
Not
please
for
mute
me.
yourself? Okay. So yeah, I would just use the cardboard box and use the grass clippings and any leaves and any materials that you can just find that are
And
clean.
about how deep should I make it?
Um Depending on the application, like for I think ours we was talking about seniors, right?
Yes.
So with seniors I would make it, at least like 20 inches high, depending on what
Okay.
you can
But
afford.
I'm saying for the barrier, how deep should I go in?
Um that's
And it
that-
should be topped up small and stuff like that.
yeah, you don't have to
Okay.
you don't have to go super deep. No,
Okay.
you don't have to go super deep. Once you lay the cardboard down, the soil animals and the weight of the soil inside the box will kind of,
Okay.
handle the grass that you worried about.
Okay.
So you don't
Thank
have
you.
to, yeah, no worries. You don't have to,
Okay.
worry about putting a whole bunch of stuff to block the grass, because just the weight of the soil in the box with the cardboard and the soil animals will kind of take care of that.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
no worries. Any other questions?
Yes. Okay. So I have a compost bin and it doesn't seem to be compost for the past 3 years. How do I start a good compost?
Compost bin.
Yeah. Well, just to know, we are having a class coming up in May, I believe, that will be all about composting. But if you have if you have one of those like earth machines or one of those plastic compost bins, I would suspect, just based on what you just told me, that maybe moisture is an issue, because you got to keep a pile needs to be kept moist, and those are usually covered containers. So if it dries out too much, it's just gonna
Gonna
not gonna
stay
hurt.
solid.
Yeah.
It's not gonna decompose. So there's a lot of variables to compost. Like Keto said, you got to make sure it's wet. You got to make sure it's warm. You got to make sure there's air in there. You got to make sure like, you know, it's just a lot of maintenance, a lot of technical things. You got to flip it. Um, and kind of just make sure that it's kind of feeding itself, I like to say, before you start really seeing any results. But uh after 3 years you definitely should see. So I would try to like add a little bit of water. I don't know how big the bin is, but I would just add a little bit of water and maybe move it around and see if you could get a reaction that way. Any other questions, Keto?
Yeah. Do you have any experience with using landscaping carpet for weed control? I'm assuming that's landscape fabric, same thing, I guess.
Yeah, it works. It works. When you buy the fabric, I like to make sure I buy the either either I use stones or staples. I use staples only when I know that there's something going over the fabric. If you're just gonna lay fabric like over your garden beds or something like that, then I would recommend using stones so that the wind doesn't tear up the fabric and you know will be just like, oh man, I gotta re-put down my fabric. So if you're using the fabric to kind of weed block your garden beds, then just use stones on top of the fabric. But if you're gonna use the fabric as far as like putting at the bottom of the bed, like Sharon was saying, then I would use staples and then cover the fabric with soil or leaves or whatever type of material that you know is covered with the on top of the fabric. But it does work. Um, yep, it works just as good.
Okay. Anything else?
I've got a quick question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, I recently, so last year I did a lot of containers just because I wasn't really sure if I could undertake the whole raised bed affair.
Mhm.
But I had such a fruitful season in containers because I made sure that the containers were large enough. I'm actually so okay. So long story short, I built 4 4 foot by 8 foot raised beds,
Okay.
and um, last year I had about 60 to 70 plants, and I know all of those plants will not fit within my 4 raised beds.
Mhm.
Um, you have, I guess, a suggestion as to what should stay in the raised beds and what I can keep in containers?
Yeah,
This
I would.
my season is very fruitful because I know my Brussels sprouts and my Brussels sprouts and my potatoes, because the containers weren't large enough, didn't fruit well at all. My
Mhm.
tomatoes, my squash, my peppers and my herbs, those were all fine, of course, because they're shallower. But what should I stick to keep in the raised beds? And what should I kind of like keep in containers? Because I'm also trying to companion plant this year as well, but I want to make sure I can grow at least as much as I did last year, if not more.
Indeed. Keto, you want to take this one or you want me to take
Yeah, sure. Well, I might suggest taking a look at the garden planning video that we did from the class we did last week. It's on our YouTube channel because it's kind of addressing this more in detail. But really, that I mean, if the question is what do I keep and what do I get rid of, it's kind of a personal thing. Like, what are your top five? I mean, some,
it?
like some things do
Not
well
so much.
better in containers than others. Like generally speaking, shallower rooted things do better in containers, like lettuces and herbs and things of that sort. Um, and if you have limited space, I mean, it's hard to say what to prioritize. But in the end, you have to look at how much space am I dealing with, how much yield do I want, and what are the crops that are I know that I cannot live without. And then what is the adequate spacing for those crops to be able to thrive. So you mentioned Brussels sprouts, for instance, and one other one that wasn't performing well, and those are
Potatoes.
potatoes. Those take a lot of Brussels sprouts are heavy feeders, and additionally, Brussels sprouts is one of those ones that takes a long time to grow, and you don't get a huge harvest off of it. So it's another consideration. Be like, well, if you grew a collard plant in that same spot, you could be harvesting that all season long. Whereas Brussels sprouts, you're like waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for one meal's worth of harvest or 2 meals worth of harvest. So So that's just another consideration. So there's lots of what things to consider in this situation, but I would boil it down to your short list and maybe check out that video that might be helpful to you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and also just to add to what Keto was saying, for your potatoes need like a really deep, so you might want to like consider either making a bed just for potatoes or finding some type of like old tub or something like that. Please be cautious when you're using things like that though. And just make sure that, you know, there's nothing like lead in it or anything like that that could harm you or your plants. But potatoes like a really deep planting area. So that may be something to consider.
And one more question.
Yep.
I I didn't have a problem. Well, last year I didn't, for my squash and my cucumbers, I did not trellis them.
Mhm.
I ended up kind of like finding things around the house. Like we had some old doors that we
Mhm.
kind of just ended up putting up to try and like put the vines on.
Mhm.
Are there any plants that I can companion plant to kind of possibly give that sort of trellis, so to speak, or what's the most inexpensive way to trellis?
I would say I wouldn't try to trellis the cucumbers on on another plant. I would set up some type of trellis netting they sell at Johnny's. I think we'll have some at the farm store as well. They have like trellis netting that you can use and kind of put up onto two different stakes and let the cucumbers like climb up it. Or you could, what I would recommend to folks also is like putting your cucumbers closer to a fence or something where they can grab on and climb up naturally. Um, as far as the squashes, they necessarily don't need a trellis, but they do need a lot of space. Um, and you said something about companion planting. There are a lot of different companions that you could plant with cucumbers. I know just some offhand are tomatoes and peppers and carrots and things like that. But when you plant those things, you also want to make sure that they don't get shaded out like we discussed earlier, because cucumber plants get kind of big, and we want to make sure that you leave enough space between the cucumber plant and whatever you're companioning so that it doesn't shade out the companion plant.
Thanks so much. That was so helpful.
Yeah, no worries. That's why we're here. Any other questions in the chat, Keto?
Um, last one, Kev, please give. Kev, I'm not sure what you're asking here about squirrels. Can you unmute yourself?
I meant to put some in there and I see it didn't come out. You know, anything someone had been using, and I saw in the presentation that there was a possibility of growing cayenne peppers. And I was told that the cayenne peppers the squirrels would hate it. I went and bought 4 big things from Walmart, sprinkled them all around my yard, and it ain't stopping them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they squirrels are their own beast.
You know what? You could yeah. Squirrels are an uphill battle, man. I'm sorry to say. You got to try different stuff.
I'm at the point where someone suggested to me to get those things that look like floodlights in your backyard, and when the squirrel crosses its path, it'll do some kind of electro thing that squirrels can't stand. Y'all have ever heard of that?
Yep, I've heard of it. I've heard of it for squirrels. I've heard of it for birds.
Have you tried that? Are they any good?
So I used to manage a site that had that kind of pest deterrent, and what I could tell you is that it might work for a minute, but after you know months of it being in the environment, the animals will know that this is not a threat. You know what I mean?
So it's no kind of sonic ray or nothing that bothers them with it, because if that was the case, they'd never be getting used to that. It's
Exactly.
just sometimes it ain't gonna work. Like I say, they about $35 to $50 a piece. You
Mhm.
have to order them online. I gotta just waste that and try that or what? There's gotta
Yeah.
be some real genius suggestions y'all could give to me and tell me how to get rid of these squirrels.
I wish it was, Kev. I really do. I wish we had a magic bullet for them, but it's not like the case. They like Keto was saying, are just a part of the ecosystem and a part of nature. And whatever we do create as humans to deter them from our plants, like they work, but they need to be mixed in with other things because over time the the animals will just, you know, get used to it. They'll conform. They'll know, like, hey, when I cross this line, this thing's gonna make this noise, and I'm just gonna wait till it goes off and then go do what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they'll adapt to whatever you use. So you kind of just gotta use new things constantly until you figure out that they just got tired of trying. That's just what it is. It's like just a uphill battle, like Keto said.
All right,
I
thanks.
understand his problem with that cayenne pepper and stuff. I was told that would do the groundhog, so I went to the Latino store about the hottest hot sauce they had and the hottest cayenne pepper they, and I sprinkled all over my yard. It was stinking, and the groundhog was just running around like, yay,
Yes, believe me, you
whatever.
guys, I've tried all these things as well. And Kev, I've listen to me. I felt exactly how you feel, brother. Like I've spent nights on YouTube trying to figure out the magic bullet for the squirrels and what it is, and it's just the reality is that they are here to stay, and we have to do our job as humans to deter them as much as we possibly can. You know what I mean? Away from our crops, but they're here. You know what I mean? There's nothing that we can do. You know what I mean? We can't evict the squirrels, so it's like we kind of just gotta do our job as humans to switch it up and make sure that they can't get comfortable knowing what's coming from our end. You know what I mean? And I bought hot sauce. I bought pea from coyotes. I bought a lot of different. I bought peppers. I bought pepper seed sauce. I bought all kind of stuff that, this is guaranteed. And it's like, okay. And the squirrel just walk right up to it like, oh, bro, you thought this was gonna stop me, and it's not. You know what I mean?
And I
So
had never heard this coyote urine before, and
yeah.
I was finna jump on that. Now you telling me that nah, you have to keep buying.
Not
You
all
have to
squirrels are
keep
made
buying.
alike.
You have to keep buying it every week or every 2 weeks. It'll cost a fortune to keep buying the urine. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
Indeed,
saying?
right,
indeed.
right.
That's the goal.
Okay. Well, guys, I think we are gonna wrap things up. If there, we'll take one last question if it's out there. Otherwise, we're gonna say our adieus and see you at the next one.
All right.
Okay. Thanks for coming out again. Nice job, Armando.
Oh
And
yeah. Thank you.
we'll be seeing you. We got a class coming up this week, Thursday, on water collection. So check that one out. All right.
Sweet.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
All
You
right, do the same,
too.
Kathy. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you all